Welcome everyone to today's episode of EspaceTV. I'm joined today by Geoff Yates, our commercial director, live and direct from his home in Poland. Hello,
Great.
Geoff.
Hiya.
Today, Geoff and I are going to be talking about Europe's critical aerospace supply chains. And what makes aerospace supply chains fundamentally different from other manufacturing sectors? So do you want to start us off there, Geoff?
Yeah, it's a weird one, really. When you look from the outside, aerospace looks exactly the same as every other supply chain, really. It looks the same as automotive. When you start to dig in, you realise it is fundamentally different. You've got parts, program life cycles, which could last anything from sort of 20 to 40 years. You've got safety critical components involved. You've got regulation involved from start to finish. So it's totally different from an automotive high value supply chain, for example. And I think one of the issues you see in aerospace is that you can't change suppliers because you've gone down that process of documenting parts and making sure that they're safety, they fit the regulations. You can't chop and change like other manufacturers could do. So I think that makes it fundamentally different from all other supply chains. And I guess it's one of those really difficult areas when you're at the crossroads between between commercial goods and defence. And I think aerospace is very unique in that aspect. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head where you've got that intersect.
And so obviously here at Espace, our core business is European freight. Yep. There are certain European regions that are becoming more critical to UK aerospace suppliers than there were 5 or 10 years ago. Do you want to run through that for our viewers?
Yeah, we've got France and Germany, of course, are the powerhouses. They're the foundations, if you like, of the European supply chain. But increasingly so, you've got more regions such as Poland, Czech Republic, Spain is becoming very important, southern Italy. They're becoming more and more important in terms of the European. So you've got that core, if you like, the stable core of France and Germany, but it's starting to spread strategically out into further parts of Europe.
That's it. When you think about Eastern and Central Europe, what kinds of aerospace components are actually moving to the UK on a day-to-day basis?
A lot of it is manufactured parts, so metalworks, engine cowlings, that sort of thing, rather than sort of finished aeroplane components. Also looking at electronics as well, you've got a very strong base here of cheap is wrong. It's cheaper than Western Europe. But you've got a very strong base of manufacturers here who can produce very high quality products for a lesser cost. So that's a reason it's becoming more important. But we are seeing more things like, again, machine parts, heavy metal works, that sort of thing coming across from Central and Eastern Europe.
So let's talk about Aviation Valley in southeastern Poland specifically.
Yeah.
There's a lot of aerospace manufacturing going on over there.
There is, absolutely, and it's about scale really and concentration. So in Aviation Valley, you've got tier ones, you've got tier twos. You're also connected to technical universities, and it's been a engineering powerhouse for a long time. So once you've got all of that brought together, you've got a lot of pull from various different industries looking to invest in those areas. And again, if you look at defence as well, the Aviation Valley is right on the border with Ukraine. It's a very strategically important part of Europe at the moment, important part of the world, really. There's an awful lot going on down there. And I do see it. I see Poland is less East Europe now. It's more Western Europe, more Central Europe, if you like. But I think it's going to be increasingly important, especially when Ukraine is resolved. That's going to be a proper gateway to a further part. And, you're really on the eastern side of Ukraine, you're sort of almost touching on Asia. It's going to be a very critical area in European future, I would say.
And what challenges are there for suppliers that are shipping from places like Poland, Czech or Romania into UK aerospace hubs?
Challenges really, I guess you're looking at technicalities. One of the big issues we see, especially in aerospace, is that paperwork has to follow goods. So of course, we're all used to customs declarations nowadays, but there's another level on top of that in terms of aerospace that has to follow the goods. So even if the goods arrive and they're customs cleared, if they haven't got the correct paperwork with them, then that becomes an issue in terms of putting those goods into production. So I guess that's one of the really big issues that we come across. And again, what makes people in the supply chain, freight forwarders, so important is the paperwork's got to follow the goods. It's not just a flow of goods.
I was just about to say, actually, if we're coming back to freight, how should aerospace manufacturers choose the right mode of transport for their product, and talk about the value that we can add as freight forwarders in that equation?
Yeah, I guess that's the beauty of a lot of Europe. So again, looking at Aviation Valley, it's far south east of Poland, pretty much as far as you can go in terms of East Europe. But we can get goods from there into the UK in anything from sort of 2 to 5 days as standard. So a lot of the goods you see, you'd think they would be run on air, but they're not. They're actually run on road, and they're run very successfully on road. Air becomes the next level along when something's gone wrong generally. Of course, in terms of aerospace, the value of the goods is so vast in many respects, and the value of a downed production line is so vast. Then the air freight becomes part of that. Generally, goods are moving, and it's very well understood and very well controlled via the road within Europe itself.
I was going to say it's a challenge for aerospace manufacturers to balance cost, lead time, and risk, isn't it?
Yes.
When they're moving their sort of production critical parts across the continent. So what advice could we give them?
It's really about risk to me, and I think that's a key part to look at. So for me, a well-planned supply chain can run on the road. That's absolutely fine. When you look at the risk, it's about the next level up. When something's gone wrong, things do go wrong. Of course, they go wrong. How do you scale up from there? Who says that then needs to go on air freight? Who said that it needs to go on a next flight out or a charter? It's making sure those things are in line. So there's no issues in planning a supply chain based on road transport. It's about that next level of where, at what time, and who says that the mode changes. So for me, again, centrally, it's all great to be planned on the road. It works very well on the road. Road is very, very well connected. But what happens when something goes wrong? Absolutely.
You've explained that well. So shall we talk about the most common customs related risks that we see when aerospace goods are moving between Europe and the UK?
Yeah, again, I mean, the good thing is goods are moving. There's no real issue nowadays. There was 5 or 6. I was going to say I had hair 5 or 6 years ago. That was a lie. But the real issue of paperwork stopping goods is sort of stopped. Where I see it is a risk at the moment is behind that in terms of compliance, and there's a gap behind those goods moving in compliance terms. And there's 2 main areas I see. Firstly is misclassification. So 2 goods can look very, very similar, or actually be the same, but come under different classifications. One area I've seen a couple of times is it's an example I've used a few times is an exhaust part for a car from Germany. And the German authorities say that this part is made from carbon fibre, and therefore it's an impregnated material, and that's how it should be classified. The UK authorities are saying it's a part for a car, and that's how it should be classified. So you've got the same good, but classified in 2 different areas. So that becomes an issue then. That's and potentially again, if you're looking at aerospace, when you've got things like dual use, it becomes a very big issue then.
Yeah.
And the other big thing I see, the other big area is rules of origin. It's again very important. It's very important when you're looking at free trade agreements and duty and such like. Yes, of course, it becomes even more important when you're looking at regulated areas such as aerospace. And when you're looking at sub-assemblies, so somebody might bring in 10, 15, 80 parts, pulling it together into one unit. What becomes of that unit's origin then? Is it because you're putting them together in Poland, for example? Are they then of Polish origin, and therefore does the free trade agreement apply to those goods? That's the really technical area and the very difficult area. And that's where I see that customs issues become. It's not about moving goods through the border. It's about the stuff afterwards and proving goods origin from there.
Let's talk about Incoterms now. And so why are Incoterms so much more important, really, in sort of aerospace logistics than most people realise? Yeah,
it's one of those things, again, that's, again, wasn't really talked about prior to Brexit, and Incoterm was probably there on the contract, but not central to that contract. And when we think about Incoterms now, it's not necessarily who pays for the freight or who pays for the goods. It's about the movement of risk. So when you're looking at moving goods, Incoterms define at what point the risk of those goods change. And of course, again, when we're looking at really tight production lines and production schedules, that risk is fundamental and hugely important. So that's where I see Incoterms again as being very important, and making sure that they're defined and understood, and making sure that people are aware of when their risk and their liability changes. And that's where I would go on that, rather than who's paying for the movements of those goods.
So let's bring it back to logistics. We're logistics people. So let's talk about what would make a good logistics partner for somebody, for some of these aerospace businesses.
Yeah, again, you look at what does good mean to you? Again, an example I use often is Amazon. Amazon are good. They're great, actually, aren't they? Something's gone missing. You try and speak to somebody at Amazon, that's not going to happen. What they do is refund the money to you and you order again. So that works for you as a individual person. That's all good. What it could do in terms of logistics is stop a line, is stop something hugely important in defence. God knows where that goes. So for me, good is about communication, and that's where freight forwarders really come in. So it's not about technology necessarily. It's not about visibility. It's about communication, being able to pick up the phone with somebody that you trust, have a relationship with. And that's where I would go in terms of good, in terms of freight forwarding. It's around relationship. It's around visibility. Is great. Yes, of course, it's great. But it's around relationship. Worst thing that can happen in logistics is silence. And we've always said it, if there's bad news, at least tell somebody there's bad news. You can start from that bad point. You can move forwards with it. So for me, it's always, it's advice I always give. If there's something new on the market, if you've got an issue, just pick your phone up to your freight forwarder, have a discussion, because they've probably seen it. They've probably been there. In our case, I've been in the industry for 26 years. We've seen a lot of things, but we're still learning every day. But there's people around the office who have probably seen it as well. And that's where collaboration and that's where talking to people really comes in.
So, and let's look to the future. And what do you think Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers should be doing now to future-proof their European supply chains, Geoff?
For me, it doesn't necessarily mean eliminating risk. It's looking at where the fragility sits behind that risk. So for me, if I was a Tier 1, Tier 2, again, visibility at that level is really good. It's 2 or 3 levels under there, and when you start to lose visibility, that's when the risk comes in. So for me, I would start to map out where my goods are, where they originate from, who's involved in that chain there. And I think one of the big issues could be that defence is becoming so important, and defence spend is becoming so big in Europe that those resources could be moved away. So for me, it's about, again, relationship, making sure that you're aware of who's involved in your supply chain, away from your own immediate circle, who's further down the supply chain, and making sure there is relationship and there's importance involved in there. And again, if you can, pick the phone up, have those conversations, be important to people. But I think that's a really good place to start. Map out where everything is. Make sure it's visible. If you can get it on the wall and you can see where things are coming from and where the issues could be. But that's where I would start with it, and make sure it's not a transactional relationship. It's a people-to-people relationship, and you're buying from people that you know and that you trust.
Absolutely. And I think that's us done for today, Geoff. If you're moving freight to and from the continent and you're in the aerospace or defence sector, and you want to have a chat, we can support you here at EspaceTV in any way that we can. Put the details in the copy below. But that's it for today's EspaceTV. Thank you.
Bye.